Dana, today we have Susan Morrison, a writer. We don't always have writers. We have SNL writers, but she's a writer Magazine. Of SNL. Yeah.
Yes.
She wrote a big fat book about Lorne.
And it's the 50th anniversary of SNL. It's a good time to have it out. Lorne, the man who invented SNL.
And she covers a lot. She's telling things to you, listeners, that even we don't know.
You're going to hear something that's a little shocking, a little surprising. How's that for a tease? But if we do a deep dive, the man, the moment, Lorne Michaels, based on the book and what she learned by interviewing. I got interviewed. My quotes are probably silly.
I got interviewed. Yeah.
Got interviewed. Everyone got interviewed. Everyone talked. And it's just sort of a comprehensive look at Lorne Michaels through his childhood, all the way through his travails, seasons that were rougher than others, and on and on. So it's a very interesting conversation.
Oh, yeah. And they got, Tina Fey and Steve Martin and John Mulaney. There's all these quotes up front, and everywhere you turn, you know who they're talking about. So very in-depth, took years to put this together.
Years to put it together. And
it was very interesting talk. We went on and on. So here she is, and you're going to learn a lot.
Susan Morrison.
And I sort of forgot, I had forgotten until recently the wonderful accent thing that everybody says, the Eagles.
Oh, the Eagles. That's right.
Eagles.
So you claim to have a book.
I do. I actually can even show it to you.
It's coming out. Okay. I don't know when this airs, but it's February 18th. It's called
that's right.
Lorne, the man who invented SNL.
That's right. Oh. Invented Saturday Night Live. We decided that Lorne has monomial status, like monomial. Fidel or Madonna, one name does it, Lorne.
You can tell the rookies because Lorne is such a name that comes up millions of times on our podcast and in life, but the people that call him Lauren and they spell it Lauren, like the female name, is pretty interesting because they're an outsider and I don't listen to one thing they say.
It's like the people who say skits instead of sketches. It's an immediate disqualifier, right?
DQ.
Oh boy, don't even skits gets him going. It's kind of interesting to me. I'm just thinking out loud to myself, is that because of his hallowed place and his Mount Rushmore, thing that's been going on for the 50th. He had left for 5 years, did a lot of things, left SNL in 1980. None of them really landed, comes back in 85, has a rough season, and then I meet him. So probably in this whole 50 years, would it be a Nate? I went to state school, his nadir or something.
I think that's right. And Dana, I remember that when I interviewed you, told me that when you showed up there, you thought you were probably going to be in the last cast of SNL. You thought it was on its way out. And it was kind of a Hail Mary pass.
Sure.
And, it's interesting because I met Lorne when he was perhaps at an even lower point. I
lower.
Worked for him. Well, I worked for him when he did the new show, which was his
new show.
Yeah, I remember.
Public, spectacular flop. And, I don't think people thought he was going to be coming back from that. And he also lost his own money in that show. It's strange it was such a flop because it was packed with talent. The writer's room was incredible. Jim Downey, Jack Handy, George Meyer.
Wow.
John Candy did amazing work on that show. It's worth looking up. Food Repairman.
No, I watched it. It was funny. It was just that besides In Living Color, which was a niche kind of prime time, and it was on Fox in the day, primetime sketch. I did one that didn't make it. Martin Short did. You'd have to line them all up. That's your next book. Okay. Why was there a bazillion sketch shows in prime time in the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s? And then so many swing and a miss. I don't know if you have. I've never totally figured that out.
I have a theory.
Okay.
Lorne,
I'm going to press record.
He loved. Sure.
We've been recording. Don't worry.
I'm kidding.
Lorne loved variety TV. He grew up watching, Sid Caesar and Your Show of Shows and all that stuff. And when he went to LA, in the 60s and 70s, he just bounced around from one cruddy variety show to the next. You know, Perry Como, Burns and Schreiber, Phyllis
Burns and
Diller.
Schreiber. What about
Burns and Schreiber,
I
where he
remember
met
that.
his wife.
Yeah, but the thing is, he liked the form, but he thought that it was like stuck in the 50s. You know, the people writing those shows were guys who had written for radio. And his big idea was to take that format and bring it into the modern world. You know, movies were cool. You had Terrence Malick and Robert Altman. Music was cool, but television was like a really weird backwater. So he was the first person who said, let's make variety TV something that has something to do with what people in their 20s are like. You know, let's put drugs on
yeah. And
on
with
screen.
your in my age group, you remember that when George Carlin was on Ed Sullivan in a suit and tie and a short haircut.
Yeah.
And then he was like a symbol of this change and one lane of it when he became the hippie, long hair and all that. So there was a whole, I don't even call it counterculture. Laugh-In maybe was the last water cooler sketch show that was so different, of course, than SNL. But yeah, it was in the ether. And then Lorne picked up the toys off the carpet and said, okay, we're going to play with these.
But you know, the other thing that Lorne will say is that when he was pitching a show like SNL for years and nobody wanted it. And what happened is that they needed something in late night on on NBC to replace Carson's reruns. And Lorne had never thought of late night. But the thing, it ended up being what made the show work, because the way he put it, you know, the network thought of late night as like a vacant lot on the edge of town. They weren't going to pay attention to what was going on there. They weren't going to meddle. You know, he just got to do whatever the hell he felt like, and with no notes, you know, no interference.
Right. And you can be a little dirt, like even TV shows on at 8 versus 9 when I was a sitcom, you can say a little more at 9 because kids are asleep. You can say way more at 10. And when you're way up there at 11:30, they don't worry so much about content as much.
Yeah, I think he thought they were probably not even watching. You know?
Well, they didn't care.
It was anti-slick and late, so it right out of the bat. I'm just a little curious. Sorry, David, did you have something to say?
Not at all.
I like to interrupt him. Did you see the movie Saturday Night? And what was your reaction to it? I mean, obviously, it's trying to get a feeling rather than a linear story.
Yeah.
But how did you feel about that?
Well, I guess I had several simultaneous reactions. You know, the journalist in me was watching with my head exploding because there were so many things that were fictionalized, or, you know, 5 years worth of events were kind of crammed into one night. But I did think that it captured some of, as you guys know, you've lived this, you know, just some of the nail-biting, knife-edge chaos that I think gives the show continues to fuel the show. It's funny, I talked to some of the current people, the people at the show now, some of the writers and cast, and they were indignant about it. They said that it was sort of like watching somebody, you know, screw up your song at a karaoke bar or something, you know, that they were feeling proprietary about it. What did you guys think?
Well, I went into it with kind eyes, because I knew it was an impossible thing to really capture. So we interviewed Jason, the director, and there were things that I really liked. In real time, that there probably wasn't a bulletin board on 8H with like 80 sketches on it right before air, or that Lorne Michaels was the update guy until right before air. So you have to kind of give into it and see, did it capture the essence? I wasn't there then. They weren't famous. Right. The show wasn't famous, because as it evolved, no one would go ice skating right before the show. And most of the show is disappointment, even in the best seasons and the best shows. Right. I'd say maybe if you can get 1 out of 5 great sketch, pretty good. Most of the time, I was just there for 10 weeks. Most of the time we all went, well, I guess that's it, and just walked off stage. So go ahead.
I mean, I found it enjoyable to watch. It kind of it felt like the Poseidon Adventure or something. It was almost like an adventure flick.
Yeah.
But
I love that reference. I love
hysterical.
the reference.
I'm dating
There's
myself.
got to be a morning after.
Yeah.
There has to be a party after the show.
Other people I know told me they had similar reaction to mine at the very end when it comes off and they do the Wolverine sketch and Chevy comes out and says live from New York, it's Saturday night. I mean, I kind of teared up a little bit because it made you realize how improbable the whole show was and how close it came to not happening. It could easily have not happened.
I did like little things I didn't know. Now, Dana, I was going to ask Jason about that Lorne one for update because I did like the chaos. I did like it was almost obviously too chaotic, but definitely knowing no fame. It just shows people, it's like sort of, here's what it was if you don't know how it started. They weren't famous. No one thinks of Dan Aykroyd or Belushi as not famous, So you have to go back and say, hey, they all get a job. It's a cruddy place. They're just throwing shit together. And then Billy Crystal leaving. Those are cool moments where you go, oh my God, there's just so many things that happen where everything there was life-changing. You get me in the first sketch. Chevy's on update. Like this. He's a big, good-looking dude. I thought there was a lot of parts about it I really did like. And you're right, when it all came together. Like, what are the bricks on the stage? I don't even know. Like, I don't know what part was real, what wasn't, fictionalized.
That was real.
So that was real.
They were hammering those bricks in the day of the first show. And of course, the old timers on the crew looked at Eugene Lee, the designer, who brought in old oak doors and bricks. And they said, what the fuck are you doing? We just use cyclorama walls. And, the way it used to be in old variety shows where instead of a set, you'd have like, a window frame or a tree in a pot to suggest a park. But Lorne's idea was that you wanted this hard wall reality. And
it looked counterculture. And I did love when was it J.K. Simmons he played Milton Berle and he's doing a song and dance number. And that was a really interesting juxtaposition because the variety shows, everything was shiny and clean and 8H still looks the same. It's kind of beat up. Yeah. And if you walk in there without an audience, you're like, it's kind of a shithole. Like,
everyone thinks it's tiny. People go, this isn't where because I went back to do Hunter Biden and it was just, again, like when Dana going back, you go, oh, so here's Tom and wardrobe. There's a lot of the same people and it's obviously bigger and a little fancier in places, but you get out there, it's the same tiny stools. Even people I was with were like, this isn't where the audience is. This is it. This is this is where every sketch is. This tiny room.
Yeah,
I know.
Wow, it is true. That's the fun of it.
Can I say? I just unless you have something you need to say.
One thing I was just going to say to we were talking about the improbability of it and how those people weren't famous. It's one of the things that was fascinating for me to learn is Lorne had trouble hiring people. Like, who wanted to be on this late night show with this weird Canadian guy no one had ever heard of? And, Chevy almost didn't come on because he was doing a play, like a dinner theater with Paul Lind,
Hey.
Paul Lind didn't take the job.
I like Broadway.
Yeah. And I love that Paul Lind stood in the way of another hire. Alan Swibell almost didn't come forward because he had been offered a job in prime time writing the questions for Paul Lind in the center square of Hollywood Squares.
I have a dirty joke about Paul Lind. You want to hear it?
Anything about Paul Lind,
we'll cut it out. I love it. Paul Lind walked into a party and he goes, "It smells like pussy in here." I think. Anyway, Dana, back to you. No, I will say,
I don't get the reference. I just thought he was a funny guy. I mean, I don't understand.
Paul Lind was a hero, by the way, at Hollywood Squares. Unreal. When I was a kid, I laughed everything that dude said.
Oh, he was always hilarious.
And now Bewitched.
Oh my God.
And Bewitched. Right. And wherever he was.
But the money was
he
low
just
too.
had a great kind of rhythm, just naturally funny. I was just curious. So you knew Lorne during the news show. Is that when you met him?
Yeah, I was brought into the Brill Building in '83 by Tom Gamble and Pross, who I'd gone to college with. and I met Jim Downey for the first time. And Jim hired me.
Just 1 second. I can talk to you in a little bit. I'll just be right back. I'll be right back. No, I want to talk to you. I really do, but I gotta go. Sorry. Go ahead.
Stay right there. Yeah.
So stay right here.
So Jim, in a rare act of decisiveness, right, hired me that day.
A rare act of decisiveness. That's funny.
To be his assistant. On the show. I was 23.
Oh my gosh.
I was 23 years old. My job chiefly consisted of ordering shitloads of food from the Carnegie Deli. Yeah. I mean, if I didn't know what chicken in the pot was, then I
writers,
knew it.
Writers eat. They have to eat.
Huxley's.
Just feed their brains.
And, it was a great thing for me. I was really young. My mom had just died suddenly, and I was kind of at sea. And so I got to go to this place with all these funny people every day. And they were so kind to me, and think about it. I mean, and Christina McGinnis and Lorne and George Meyer and Jack Handy, Dwight Bell. It was fun. So I didn't have a lot of one-on-one time with Lorne, but it was a pretty small operation. And we were all just in the little, on the 9th floor of the Brill building. So yeah, I mean, I knew him a little bit. And again, I didn't realize that what I was witnessing was this soul-crushing failure on his part.
How did he take that failure, if you could even remember, or all of you? Because I did a variety show that lasted 8 episodes and kind of blew up the network.
Yeah.
So did you get a full season? Or did you? I don't know how long.
No, it wasn't. I think we did like 8 shows, and then. Okay. And this is the thing that was really weird about it. Lorne had been used to working live, but the new show was taped on Thursday to air on Friday. So it brought out all of Lorne's, less genius impulses. I mean, people always say that, Lorne always says that the show doesn't go on because it's ready. It goes on because it's 11:30. And, he needs that deadline. He needs the deadline. And that's when he gets into his kind of superpower mode, the meeting between the dress rehearsal and air. But if you think about it, so the new show, we would be taping and he would yell cut, and then they'd start a sketch over. And sometimes these tapings would last for 5 hours. And,
because you get perfectionist and you can't stop fixing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I remember the audience trying to leave in droves, and Tom Gamble coming out and going like, "You quitters!"
Sure.
So they're watching the same sketch over and over again.
Well, it's like a sitcom. You're trying to get it right.
Yeah.
When you're on a movie and it's a big budget, that happens where you just do take after take. Someone's got to go, "Hey, are we any good? Like, can we just move on? Like, this is it. The best we can do."
And then they'd be up all night in the editing room, like splicing the takes together so that it leached all of the magic out of it. I mean, you guys know, because you've done it, the adrenaline of live really adds something. But imagine these comedy sketches pieced together. They had to add laugh tracks, right? So
it's all different.
I remember knowing that it wasn't going well. And then I guess Brandon Tartikoff said to Lorne after, I can't remember, maybe 8 shows, like, why don't you just not make the rest of them? And instead, and here's the novel idea, let's make best of the new show ours.
Best of?
So, after only 8 episodes, we're going to do best ofs?
Finished out.
By the way, I don't know what time we have. How did you end up writing this book? That's popped into my head.
I was only, that was my only time in television. I switched to journalism after that.
Yeah.
But I stayed friends with all those writers, and a lot of them, including Steve Martin and Jack, and have written for me at the New Yorker and other places I've worked. So I was always kind of in the, I would run into Lorne every 5 years and say hi. I think our daughters knew each other in school, but after the 40th anniversary, I was an empty nester. I had this crazy idea I was going to have a lot of time. And I just realized it really hit me how Lorne is like single-handedly responsible for what America thinks is funny, across so many generations. And I thought he'd be a great subject for a book. So I sold a book first. I did a proposal. There was a bidding war. I chose Random House. And then I went to see him in his office, and I said, because I know, you guys know Lorne, he likes to be out of the frame. He likes to be behind the curtain. He's not a very public facing guy. So I said, Lorne, I just signed a contract to write a book about you and the show. I don't need anything from you. I know your people and I'm kind of around. But if you wanted to talk to me and participate in it, it'll be a better and a richer book. And, your legacy deserves that. And at first he looked like he was going to have a heart attack, and he just was like, ah.
Yeah.
And then, he said he'd think about it. And we had a drink a couple of days later, and he just started telling those stories. He just started talking. And so he was in. We didn't have any kind of agreement. He liked the fact that it was my book. It's not a vanity project that he had any approval over or anything. But he's smart enough to know that that's better, to have like a real work of journalism about you and not some silly, sort of puff book.
He had always told me I would never write a book because I couldn't tell the truth. So in terms of like you're writing this,
better.
And like, what do I include? You, Susan, what do I not include? Is this unflattering to Lorne, who I have affection for, and I think is seminal? So when he was sharing with you, it was stories that you felt were benign. I mean, the book's coming out. Did he bury people? What did he say about me? Sorry.
Oh, Dana, what he said about you is, it's a fucking show pony. I mean, you, both of you are really,
he knows me?
Really up there in his pantheon. No, I think that I think one of his reservations in the beginning, and this is very smart of him, he knows that people have very selective memory. I don't know that he read deeply in those, like the Oral History by Tom Shales and Jim Miller, but he certainly knew that over the years, people had put out versions of things that were wildly exaggerated, and he also knew that comedians like to kind of embellish a story to make it funnier, right? That's a human thing. So I think he was a little worried about that, but I asked him lots of questions. He told me lots of stories. I'd say in the final 2 years of the reporting, what I was doing was I'd go over there on a Friday night and I'd say, okay, now what we're going to do is try to do some like fact checking, because a lot of times I'd have 3 or 4 different versions of an event.
Ooh, yeah.
And I wanted him to try to be a tiebreaker. Like, what do you think actually happened here?
Mm-hmm.
And, he was very honest. A lot of times he just said, God, I don't know. It was the 70s,
Yeah.
But again, because I, work at the New Yorker and where fact checking and accuracy are important, I worked really hard to try to get
to the bottom of things.
And there were definitely things, and I brought all these things to him. There were definitely things that maybe stung a little bit, or that he would have preferred not be in the book. But he never said like, "Oh God, don't put that in the book." He understood that. Yeah, and I really respect the hell out of him for that. I mean, he knew I was going to write a real book, but the response among his world and his publicists and the people around him has been really positive. People think that I've really got him. But I mean, going into something like this with a character as mysterious and feared as Lorne is, I always knew that there would be a contingent of people who said like, oh God, this is just a blowjob. And then there'd be other people who would say, this is a hatchet job.
Yeah.
Right? So I think, I mean, I'm in awe of Lorne, and I really admire him, and I admire and like him even more at the end of this process than I did at the beginning. I think what he's done is incredible. But you guys worked there when people would be bitching about this or that, or it's a tough place, right?
Did you talk to any cast that said anything that, or any personalities just very different than what you thought once you get them on the phone?
Let's see.
Or is everyone kind of?
That's such a good question.
Did you hang up with someone and go, wow, they were very.
One person who blew my mind was Dan Aykroyd, because he talks in these sentences.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever talked to him?
We did a live podcast with him at David's house.
You know what I mean? Like, he talks in perfect paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
And I just would never have thought that he's somebody who, and he's so thoughtful and uses such interesting words.
Yes.
Let's see who else.
They didn't know what to do with the lumber back in Canada in 1954.
He has a lot of facts, especially about Canada.
The steel manufacturers didn't care for the lumber at all. Yeah, he is like this, and he made it one of his comedy rhythms. He did it as Coneheads. He did
Coneheads
it
has a lot of that talk in it.
Long, free consciousness kind of speeches. So it's part of his.
Well, it makes
comedy.
you realize that, Beldar Conehead and Van Aykroyd are very similar, aren't they?
Close. Parental units. I told someone, "Are you with your parental units tonight?" And then I said, after I've said this a million times, I go, that's from Coneheads. They're like, "What is that term?" I go, "I think so, isn't it?" Remember, he goes parental units, and
sure.
And no one knew that. I go, "Oh, that's so funny." It just gets in the ether, and people. You had some good quotes here from a lot of the stars. I think some are funny, some are just straight ahead, interesting. And I like Steve Martin says, Dave Letterman is genuinely self-deprecating. He genuinely doesn't think he's any good. Those issues don't come up for Lorne. So funny. And also, go ahead. Oh, Jane Curtin saying, he spent a lot of time talking about where he's going to eat. Is that very true? Or so tonight
at 9:00. Chevy will be there. Chevy Chase? No. Chevy Wilson.
One of the Pauls.
Right.
You'll find with Susan, she's that thing of she wants to please, and yet she has an eagle eye. And she sees what others don't.
Bill Hader's is funny too.
Bill Hader.
Yeah.
Bill has a great Lorne. You just a very
He says, Dana, if you start drowning, he's not like, hey, here's a life jacket. He's like, ooh, that guy's drowning in my pool. Let's go here and let's go hang with Alec Baldwin.
Well, it is
funny.
One of the things that is so interesting about Lorne is that even though people would, early in the show, as the show started getting successful and Lorne started getting richer with fancier friends, people would bitch and moan about that. Belushi referred to Lorne's fancy friends as the dead, all those socialites and everything. But I think that it was kind of interesting the way Lorne managed to parlay that into kind of a comic character on the show, like the Lorne that you see in the Smigels TV fun houses. Get me back my show. And
come back with more show.
He kind of, I feel like he almost, the Lorne Pasha, like producer character, became a character on the show as much as like Church Lady did,
the aloof producer that just stands there with a beer or something or a glass of wine. Yeah.
And I remember, I hope we hear more of your Lorne, Dana, today, but I remember asking Alec Baldwin at one point, who do you think does the best Lorne impersonation? And Alec just said, Lorne.
All right. Telling. Right. It's that thing of I never met anyone who talked like that, but I do believe that's what I'm kind of curious about. And so you went on this journey, and it's not so much just like what makes Lorne tick, but it's sort of like, where's the marshmallow inside this veneer, because I think he wants to be one of the guys, and I think he is very observant and wonders what people are thinking of him, and gets easily wounded in a way, but he's also so resilient. I mean, he's Trumpian in just that way, to which we probably talked about, just keeping the show consistent. Now 50 years, we have data now, a fucking half century. Where did this guy come from? Who is he? Will that be answered when I buy the book?
I think you're going to get your $38 worth. But no, everyone I talk to about Lorne, it's the same. They're all kind of trying to unriddle him. Conan says everybody thinks that Lorne has the secret. Part of that is that he isn't unlike a lot of guys who got rich and famous in the 80s, like Barry Diller or Michael Milken or people like that. Yeah. He's never been like a show-off workaholic. he's not one of those people who says, I get up at 4 a.m. and work out with a trainer. And then he does seem to know how to live. He kind of invented work-life balance, but
Yeah.
But then in terms of, you say the marshmallow inside, I don't want to be too psychobabbly or, too much of
why
an
not?
easy answer, but
Go ahead.
a lot really does take you back to Lorne suddenly losing his father when he's 14 years old. He was completely at sea, and his father collapsed one night after having a big argument with Lorne. They had a big fight. Father collapses, disappears into the hospital. Lorne never sees him again. This gives you some indication of why, you never see Lorne having a yelling match with anybody. He keeps it very low. I think at one point I say in the book that he speaks in the register of a man announcing a golf tournament, but I think that his whole world got smashed when he was 14. Then he had a bad year. His mother thought he was going to be a juvenile delinquent, to use the term
Juvie.
popular in the juvie. Yeah. And he had to kind of rebuild. He had to put it all together. I think it gave him a kind of resilience that helped him throughout his whole career. Just when I was starting the book, I interviewed Judd Apatow for the New Yorker Radio Hour. And he said something that really resonated with me. When Judd was 14, his parents had a really bad divorce. And I think there were financial problems. His whole world kind of fell apart. And he told me that he definitely, because of that, that's why he kind of early in his life abandoned his dreams of being a performer and instead became a director and producer. Because, when you're that guy, you've got the clipboard, you got the call sheet, you're making sure that everything works. You're making sure that it's not going to be chaos. You're taking care of everything, as opposed to, if you're a performer, you're just kind of strutting your own stuff. And I thought that reminded me so much of Lorne, because he also was a performer early in his life. But
heart and heart.
He's determined to not let anything fall apart, because his own world fell apart when he was 14. That'll be $350 for that.
I always thought it was people who started out in comedy and just saw that it wasn't going to happen for them, and then they became a writer or a director.
It's a more consistent job.
I did not realize when I was on Saturday Night Live that every single writer essentially wanted to be in front of the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
I didn't know that until I started reporting this book. Think about all the people who were just writers. Mulaney, Odenkirk, those guys never got on stage.
Sure.
Robert Smigel, they all want to be, they all want to be, trust me.
Conan.
I love that kind of Lorne. Well, do you think Mike will be here? He's visiting. It's not very far from, the bleachers to where the cameras are. He has so many sayings. It's a little short walk.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
But when you do Lorne, you get to kind of inhabit Lorne. And I do think because the show is magnificent chaos, that's also part of his methodology. Is he'll be the calm when people
was anybody angry?
Oh, well, yeah, there's definitely some people who are angry. Because it's one of the things I would say that maybe Lorne's biggest achievement was just creating this kind of culture with walls around it. It's a tribe, and you're in it or you're out of it. It's like The Godfather kind of, and there are a handful of people. Who,
Lord of the Flies,
who, I think that's one of the reasons it was so painful for Conan when he lost the Tonight Show and went to TBS. He was kind of, he had spent his whole career at NBC, and and for a while he had a little bit of a frosty rupture with Lorne. I think he was off the T-shirt list. Stopped getting the Broadway video. You guys still get those the Broadway video T-shirts?
I don't know if I still do.
I think so. Yeah, I do. Yeah, Lorne, he wants to be in the loop. He did not produce the Conan Tonight Show, right? For some reason.
That's right. He produced Late Night for Conan, and then when Conan went to LA, NBC. I mean, it was kind of a drama. NBC told Conan and his producer Jeff Ross, "Oh, you don't need Lorne to be your EP," But I
Right.
think that was a misstep. I think it probably would have been a good.
Yeah, I think in the end of the day, and this there's been even current things that I won't mention with different people, is just shows that's important to Lorne, and maybe it's how he reacts to other people in his life. You show respect. You want to give Lorne the chance to say, "I think you should do it without me."
Yeah.
Right.
If you started with him and he gave you your break, then you do kind of have that
Yeah.
feeling.
But it's a hard back and
Some
forth to say,
loyalty.
Lorne, do you want to produce this movie? Because now you're putting him on the spot sometimes if he doesn't. But if you don't and it's success, he's like, why wouldn't you bring that to me? It's very touchy because you don't want to go, I want a new
Sounds
favor.
hard,
I
yeah.
want a favor from you. Also, this thing about networks is tough because also, let's say I did a show for a network, like I've done sitcoms, and they're always whining and dining you up for a sitcom the whole run. And the second it's over, let's say you do a pilot or something, or they cancel your show, there's always part of you that thinks mistakenly, but this network, we were friends. Like, how could they do that? That's the weirdest thing that you realize. It's all just for the moment. Things are going good. Everything's great, but don't get too chummy because you're just a card on a board where they say, we don't need that anymore. We're putting this here. They don't think like that. They don't go, oh, is someone's feelings going to get hurt? They're just like, this does better than that we got to put that there. It's very hard. It's very rare they go, hey, I mean, they might say it, but they're not just saying, hey, just because we're all buds, we should keep this on forever.
Yeah, I think that for Lorne, it's a relationship business, and he really does.
For that, yes.
One of his old Canadian friends told me that even from the very beginning, you could tell he likes rabbit's feet. He likes to have these familiar people around.
Sure.
And I think, one time he was kind of half joking, but he compared himself to, he said, I'm like Prometheus. I brought I'm the bringer of fire to these young people, the people he hires and whose life he changes. And he is aware that, he's very aware that you want to stay tight with the people who were there for you at the beginning.
Sure.
It's why he kept Bernie. I'm sure he was paying Bernie Brillstein 15%, up to the very end. When was the last thing Bernie did for Lorne?
Even when it went to 10%, he's probably still paying him 15%.
Whatever.
Yeah. By the way, Prometheus, for all the kids listening, is a rapper.
Lil Prometheus.
Yeah, Lil Prometheus. By the way, I have it off the grid here. The new show. Is it possible you would remember this? I think this is a dumb joke for the new show. A. Whitney Brown and Louis, were they both on it? Possibly.
I don't think they weren't they?
But on camera.
No, they weren't on it.
They weren't on the new show?
No, they weren't.
No.
Okay, because this joke is from something else. It could have been.
But weren't they on Dana's show?
Louis C.K. I hired as my head writer.
No, Louis Anderson.
A. Whitney Brown was not writing for it.
I remember a sketch with Louis Anderson and Whitney Brown. But what
Louis
could have
Anderson
that been
and Whitney
on?
Brown.
It could have been on a bad episode of SNL.
On a
perhaps.
figment of my imagination.
Might have been in the 85 season. I think that's when A. Whitney got hired.
Here's the joke.
Yeah. Okay.
They're in it's like a just quick cutaway, like on Laughing. They walk out in Roman togas. One's ripped and one isn't. And Whitney goes, Whitney goes to Louis that's ripped and says, Euripides? And he goes, Eumenides? And that was it.
That's right out of Ed Sullivan.
Isn't that a weird...
That's Topo Gigio right there.
I mean,
Topo
but those
Gigio,
two, I'm pretty sure I'm lying, but why would I even think of this when you were talking about the new show?
But that reminds me of when Lorne directed his show in college, UC Follies, which was very much like a proto SNL thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Shakespeare parody in it that Lorne wrote. This is actually one of the first funny joke that Lorne Michaels wrote, to my mind. There was a character in it named Handenbra. Get it?
Okay, got it.
Instead of Fortinbras.
Yeah.
Handenbra. You got it?
I like it.
I got it.
Pretty good.
I like a good
That's
pun.
it.
That's the beginning, middle, end.
Hindenburg.
It's very
Hey, it was
economical.
the 50s, people.
I love it.
Hindenburg was
Listen.
a big deal.
Listen, I laughed harder at Hee Haw. I don't know what, I can't any reference. I laughed at Donnie and
that's
Marie.
what Bernie Brillstein told me. They take your hee-haw money in London. Because he was producing
Yes,
hee-haw.
right.
He didn't like, I don't like fake art. He just thought the art scene was ridiculous.
It's funny when people say, like, Belushi only made $400 a week on SNL and he made 10 grand for Animal House, which is not bad money, especially when you're an unknown. They forget that they weren't a huge star on the cover of Time magazine. Did Belushi get on the cover of Time? I heard Chevy did. Did Belushi?
Belushi was on Newsweek.
Oh, Newsweek.
Chevy for Animal House, and Chevy was on New York Magazine at the end of season 1. They called him the heir apparent to Johnny Carson, and that's basically what started all kinds of splintering in that first cast. Because the idea wasn't for one person to emerge as a star. That kind of screwed everything up.
Immediate problems. That's always been there since then.
Yeah. You were talking about the asking about the new show. I just remembered one funny little conflict that happened there. I remember Gamble and Pross wrote a sketch called Time Truck. It was a time traveling truck. And it was for a show Kevin Kline was hosting. And the idea was Kevin Kline was supposed to play Abe Lincoln. And they were supposed to go back in time to prevent Lincoln from getting shot. But Lorne thought that it would be much funnier to have his close personal friend, Paul Simon, play Lincoln, just as a sight gag.
Right.
The writers are like, Paul Simon is not a comic actor.
Yeah. And he's very quiet.
It was Paul. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Frustration.
Reason number 800 why the new show didn't fly off the shelves.
Did we talk about obviously you mentioned Lorne hacked life. That's the new phrase. Like you go to Buttermilk and you ski and then you're in St. Bart's and you go to Wimbledon, and Paul and I would often go out and just buy socks. You go downtown. And he did pace himself. That's part of the half century is he does pace himself. He knows when it's important for him to lock in. And that's especially this Saturday, that 30 minutes is where everything's made. And the whole show is based on ADD and procrastination. So at Lorne's core, does he have both those elements? Because I do.
Yeah, well, Jim Downey had a really smart way of describing this. He said, Lorne is a guy bad at term papers, great at tests. So if you give him an open-ended thing that he has to sit down and fiddle with, he's just never going to finish it. But when there's a deadline, when there's an alarm bell that goes off, that's, I think someone said the deadline is Lorne's cocaine. It's the thing that gets him galvanized. And can you imagine if that show was taped? You would never have that moment, at 10:30 where he's saying, But I think that he definitely has said to me a bunch of different times that he was always his whole life reluctant to burn a bridge or to close a door. He always felt like, if I do this, then I won't ever be able to do this. I mean, he also told me a story, this kind of related. He told me, it's a real memory of once his father taking him to a diner when he was a little boy and saying, just order anything you want off the menu. So he ordered a hot dog and a hamburger and a grilled cheese and onion rings and French fries and, couldn't eat it all. And then his father said, let this be a lesson to you. Your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Now, I don't know how Lorne converted that into a lesson about comedy, but he did. And I think that if you think about that plate full of junk food at the diner, it's not unlike what the show is like Saturday going into, they still have way more than they can use.
Sure.
And it's chopping it down.
And you don't need everything. You don't need everything you think you need in life also is a bigger way. It's true.
Right.
Yeah, I want to go to lunch with his dad. Yeah. I need to learn things. That's a good one. Buy me a hot dog.
We both have dad stuff. I mean, do all comedians have mom or dad stuff?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I thought it was, a lot of people talk about these different rules Lorne has about comedy, these Lorneisms. And I think all the comedy ones are interesting. But it was also really interesting for me to hear how many of them were just about like how to live your life. So many people talked about how Lorne would say, buy yourself an apartment that you think you can't afford, because, then you'll come home after a hard day at work and you'll go, wow, who lives here? And you go, wow, I live here, And,
he told me that. He said, get,
yeah,
it matters where you live. So if you're torn, get the nicer one.
He does his Lorne, and a lot of it is just good old fashioned wisdom.
yeah.
Well crafted. Did we talk about the one that was sort of took me by surprise, about this generation or whatever, snowflakes or anxiety or whatever? We were raised in the wilderness and we got like civilized. They're raised civilized, and then we want them to go out into the wilderness, which is sort of brilliant. I said that at Howard Stern and go, what does that mean? I go, Howard. But,
no, he said that to me too. And I totally get it.
I like
it.
Yeah.
But, it was also, I spent so much time hanging out there that it was really interesting for me to see he's so patient kind of with the millennials and some of the snowflakey, sensibilities. But one day he said something that really cracked me up. This is in the book. We were walking in the theater district and we walked past the Mean Girls marquee. And he had just got tickets for his friend Margaret Trudeau to go. But he was really mad because one of the leads had called in sick because she had to take her dog to the vet. The dog had eaten glue or something. And he just said, if it was Patty LuPone, the dog would be dead. He just couldn't believe, that this person's pet was.
I think in the new days, there's just options you didn't have. Like, you can just not do things anymore. In the old days, it's like, no, you go, no matter what. You go work, you go to school, you do this. And now it's like, if you feel like it, unless you want to call in a day you're not mentally feeling like it, it's like, or you have anxiety. If I had the word anxiety back then, I would have used it all day.
I think Lorne has a classic characteristic of somebody who is has power in a meeting, and that is if things are going around the room, and then Lorne will sort of sum up something or say something that's not exactly on topic but related to the topic in very few words, and it's like, I just think I don't know, this is a hackney one, but it just needs to breathe or whatever. Make sure that the audience knows you're actually performing, sort of, don't just do it to each other. So that's kind of one of his superpowers. And that's really important with the suits and Universal and stuff. I was at parties with the suits and Lorne. And he doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, it's usually it's pretty hard or it's interesting.
Yeah, no, he has a lot of things like that can kind of close off discussion. Like he'll say, it'll get there.
Yeah.
Or he'll say, it knows what it is.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Really good things.
Yeah. All I'm saying, he never really says, do this. All I'm saying is like, do we really have to go there with that right now?
I thought it was also interesting that even though, in that meeting between Dress and Air, he really is like a general, and that's the time at which he famously yelled at Bob Odenkirk once, Odenkirk, if you talk again, I'll break your fucking legs, but mostly
that's when he's most confrontational because there's no time left.
It's no time for any fun bullshit. It's like, go, go, go.
Right. But even though he is, that is his moment, he rarely forces somebody to change something. I mean, writers are always telling me,
that's true.
Yes, he'll give you the note. He'll say maybe this, maybe that, but he isn't going to say you have to change the ending. He lets it belong to the writers, which is so unusual.
Some of mine got dirty, and he would say, to interrupt you, he would say, I don't know if you need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put it if you want, but I don't know if you need it. And that's a good way of saying, oh, you feel like it's a little dirty? It's kind of smart the way it is. I don't know if you need that. And you go, yeah, okay. Like, okay, well, if you say it, I'm obviously younger and just new on the show. I think I would take your gut feeling over mine.
I know, because I said to Lorne just in the fall when I was there, I said, you're like an AI. Like you have downloaded the show in your brain.
That's a good
So
way.
Lorne's blink is the best blink because he can't even, He's going back to Downey did that in my early days. Like,
Yeah.
it's similar to a Chevy idea. It's like so he.
Right.
That's why his blink is really good. He kind of knows. He can't even totally describe what's wrong in a way, but his spider sense, because he's downloaded the show.
But he might say, as David was just saying, he might say, "Well, do you think it's working?"
Yeah, stuff like
That's how
that.
he would do it.
Oh.
Do you think it's working? But Dana, this is reminding me, what David just said is the story you told me about the time he thought Church Lady got too dirty with the football players.
Yeah. And he was really kind of right. It was just, it was Joe Montana and Walter Payton, and I'm doing a church chat. And so
I
it was
like it
just became vaudevillian sexual innuendos. So like we're playing football, squeeze the between your legs and let me, it was just a lot of that.
Bulbous
And Lorne
nuts.
was like, does it really? It was like a little, and he didn't want Church Lady for a while.
People like the Church Lady.
I think she needs a name, and stuff like that. And he didn't really like the Superior Dance. He wanted to be more grounded in reality. But like he never told me yay or nay. But the Joe Montana one, because maybe it was lowbrow or something. It was later in the show, but it killed so hard that the old timer sound man said, "I've been here for 20 years. I've never seen the needles go that high." So anyway.
That Superior Dance thing. I mean, I didn't know he didn't like that because, boy, I think that's so funny. But
I think he wasn't a fan of it, but maybe he probably accepted it as the character grew, got bigger.
Yes, she became a signature.
Yeah,
because I know Conan told me that, or maybe Lorne told me, maybe they both told me. Rare instance of everybody agreeing that Lorne was always telling Conan to get rid of that string dance thing that he did. Where he would touch his nipples and go.
Yeah.
Lorne hated that. But Conan stuck with it and it worked. There are people, people, I guess.
Well, that is the thing about catchphrases and or repetitive physical things or signature. Johnny Carson does the golf swing. I don't know if there's something homey to your brain, oh, Conan's doing that again. We all do it.
Right. Well, Mark McKinney told me that at the initial read through of the Kids in the Hall series, the one thing that Lorne just didn't understand was the "I'm crushing your head" guy.
Oh.
And that when Mark, and that sketch.
That's
is
a big one.
Yeah, with the camera set up so it looks like you're
that
plays that game as a little kid in some way.
When Mark first read it, Lorne said like, "Oh, so it's a funny voice thing." But he didn't.
It wasn't.
Dana,
really.
you can say that better than me. But then when he saw it, when he saw that it was a visual, like that,
right?
Then he got it and he liked it. So again, you really have to have a sense of yourself, I guess, right? Because a more of a Fading Violet kind of performer would have just said, "Okay, we'll cut that sketch."
Sure.
Right, and Lorne is. He's open to, if it works, it works. I mean, he just loves a laugh. So if that makes him so high, and you see how he still just suffers. If the show's going a little flat, you see it in his body language, his attitude. If the show is lifted, it's just, from across the way, if your sketch destroys, it'd be like, and that's like a really good coach that never overpraises. But when he does, it means a hell of a lot. So that's
right. Yeah.
aspect.
So many people told me about how they would come off stage and just feeling like they really killed. And, then in the Monday meeting, he wouldn't talk about that, but he would say, Nora, you were breathtaking as the fourth waitress, that kind of thing.
Yes. I thought Jan's exit was breathtaking.
Exit. Well, Susan, Dana, anything else for this young lady who's writing a great book?
So now your book is emerging.
Yeah.
Within this gigantic SNL 50th.
Yeah.
Whatever you want, extravaganza. And I can't keep track of all the documentaries. People, I don't, were you in that one?
The cowbell one is great. We got to watch that.
It's a whole
I just went to a
documentary.
little house they rented for me and said, "Will you talk about cowbell?" I go, "Okay." So I'm doing it. And then they were talking about
You're
Lorne.
great in it, Dana. Yeah.
I don't even remember what I said, but it's such an extravaganza. And then your book's coming out. I guess that's a good thing rather than if the book had come out during just a regular year.
Yeah.
Well, it took me so long to write it that
only 10 years.
This wasn't part of the plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that
I love that it
come out 5 years ago.
fell into right now is good.
It really worked. And I'd say, I mean, it definitely works. And especially because so much of the hoopla, so much of the other stuff, it's like snippets of sketches. But my hope is that, people really don't know that much about Lorne. The comedy cognoscenti know that he's Obi-Wan Kenobi and everything else. But I think that the greater world doesn't know how complicated and fascinating and strange and brilliant he is. And I hope, as you were saying, Dana, I hope I'm kind of able to explain that a little bit. So
Sure.
The one thing people asked me today about the show that I don't have an answer for, just a basic answer, I guess, but how numerologically the cast has started to expand and then become an expansionist cast. So like 20 cast members. So people will ask me, why do they have all those cast members? And I go, well, I guess a safety net, or what? Did he ever talk about that?
I think that's a really good question, because I know there was a time in the 90s when he was trying to do the changeover, like between the Hartman cast to the Sandler cast. He was hiring a lot of people. I thought it was maybe just to ease create a buffer. And then there was like some big budget cutback, and he had to get rid of a bunch of them. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that unless. And I'm speculating here, unless it's in a diversity effort, to just try to get a more diverse cast. But I don't think it serves the show, because I think that there's so many people. You're kind of, who's that
You
one?
don't know
I don't remember
for
that
sure.
one.
You don't know for sure. It's too hard.
It's very hard. I talked to some of the young cast members, because if you're not in it a lot and then you get in there and then you maybe flub a line or don't totally score, then you go back again. Where I think I was part of the last small cast. And then when David and Sandler and Farley all, we got some really great people to add to us and some left. But me and Phil and John, I think, were just the 3 major male sketch players. So I was in 4 things the first show, or 5 things. And I have a lot of empathy for the cast members that they're in the dugout. They're on the bench. They're not
And do
playing.
you quit, or do you stay and you go, I quit SNL. I didn't get anything out of it. Like, it's so hard to sit there and rot going, am I going to ever score? It really takes one good sketch. Then you're on the map.
What was yours, David? What was the thing that made you feel
God, it took a long time. I think it was one where I played a receptionist was the first time I got any sort of.
And you had a catchphrase.
Did it it was in Dress, the last sketch, and the Air, it was the first sketch. And so
that's a
that
good
was
and,
Roseanne.
and you are
Jesus
was the
Christ,
catchphrase.
And you
right?
are so good. Yeah.
Just a dry bit based on kind of Lorne. I'm going to see
and the assistants.
Yeah, and all that.
The thing about the huge cast that's even harder now, Dana, and when I was hanging around there a few years back, the cast they would let you know. I mean, of course, it's thrilling for them when geniuses like you and Alec and everybody come in to play these cameos. But during the first Trump administration, so many. You have all these stars coming in.
Yeah.
And that squeezes.
Matt Damon and so forth. All great people doing great parts.
If you were in the cast, you might be pissed.
Of course.
Well, I did ask, and I was sincere about it when they asked me to do Biden. I said, does Mikey still want to do it? Does anybody want to do it? And and they said no. Because Biden was sort of a thankless task. It was a difficult one, and there was the whole energy around, should you make fun of his mental acuity or not, and threading that needle. So I was totally aware of that. And they're all incredibly sweet. They seem sweeter than we were, but they're very nice people. But we had Dan Aykroyd come in and do Bob Dole. That was it once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was all us playing it. So I don't know. I mean, Lorne has his thing. I don't think he likes when people leave. I think when Belushi and Aykroyd left, it kind of left him flat-footed. And so he likes I get it. He likes a bench that can come in and, so.
Right.
50 years. Now, a final question.
Okay.
How much longer, since you've been inside this Lorne brain, will he go?
Well, I firmly believe, I don't think he's going to just say, over and out. He's never missed a show.
Bye-bye.
He's never missed a show.
Yeah.
I think they'd have to carry him out of there in a stretcher. But I don't think that any of I don't buy any of the replacement theories. I don't think Tina or Seth or I can't see any of them doing it. What I think is the likelier idea, and I hope this doesn't sound too McKinsey, but the way I see it, Lorne is completely essential 2 days of the week. He has to be there during read through because he really pays attention to the room.
Yeah.
And then he, picks the show after that with his deputy's help. And then Saturday, when he's sitting there under the bleachers,
it's a good theory,
and so I think he has this great team of people who could do the other stuff. And if he came in, was wheeled in on Wednesday afternoon and on Friday and on Saturday
on a
evening.
Stretcher.
Well, there's an element. No. There's like a soft element of that now,
Yeah,
because I would want an answer, and they said, "Well,
sure.
We'll let you know when Lorne gets here. It's 4:00."
That's
Lorne knows how to pace himself and when to lock in.
Yeah.
So he's doing a soft version of that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And all those people, Doyle and Kenward and Higgins, they really know him, so they can give a pretty good approximation.
Yeah, when he'll come in, and what he might say. Yeah.
But there's no one could do what he does under the bleachers. I mean, when I'm sitting there under the bleachers with him, and you guys, I'm sure you've done this, right? And the funniest one when I was there for the Jonah Hill show, and Maggie Rogers, who was then just starting out as a singer, she comes out on stage at dress wearing this big red caftan and no shoes. And Lorne just goes, barefoot. Where's she from? A place with roads? He was so mad.
I know. Well, the funniest one is just that he watched the dress show, and the Chardonnay should be more pale, stuff like that. It's like, but he notices things you're not even aware. But yeah, I think he's going to go a while.
He seems very, he's very with it and alert, and I've never seen him sick. He's taking good care of himself.
I don't hear that. I never. It doesn't look like, even when I was there briefly, it doesn't seem like he's, barely getting to this 50th. It's like 50th, then they got the rest of the season after the big show, and then they start working on next season. I don't know
when this podcast airs, but I bet you Lorne, he's only human. I mean, he will be kind of a little bit relieved when this whole hoopla over, because we can't, unless it was the mic drop, the show ends. He knows that pretty soon, okay, we have 10 more fucking shows to do.
Well, one thing he did tell me when the Reitman movie came out, that was sort of the beginning of, like his anonymity being blown in a way. I mean, he told me he didn't see it. I mean, who knows if he did.
I said I saw it for you, and you come off great. Yeah. I said you don't have to see it.
But he said, I just feel like I've lost control of my life. It's like as the 50th approach, I think he's really excited about the show, and he's excited about seeing everybody. He loves everybody, but he does feel, I mean, even to some extent with a book, it's just like he's kind of stepping out. The Reitman movie put him center stage. This book puts him center stage. It's a shift for him.
Right. In the end of the day, he is the linchpin. He's bigger than any cast member as far as the history of SNL. He is,
sure.
Well, he is, as I think I quote some agent in the book saying that when she has clients going to audition for Lorne, she says, you got to remember, he is the star of the show. It's Lorne, which is interesting.
Interesting. But he loves funny people, and he
really does.
He does,
and he's funny. He's a funny person, which a lot of people
extremely
don't know.
Dry, droll wit. Yeah, that hits you pretty hard sometimes. Wow. Well, congratulations. It's hard to write a book, and I'm sure it's going to do really well. And what was your advance? How much did you got so far? Hello,
February 18th.
Thank you so much. This was really,
18th.
Really fun, you guys.
This flew by. It was easy. We love talking about our old boss.
Call back anytime, okay?
I can't wait to read my chapter. All right. Bye.
Thanks, Susan. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
This has been a presentation of Audacy. Please follow, subscribe, Leave a like, a review, all the stuff. Smash that button, whatever it is, wherever you get your podcasts. Fly on the Wall is executive produced by Dana Carvey and David Spade, Jenna Weiss-Berman of Audacy, and Heather Santoro. The show's lead producer is Greg Holtzman.